Welcome to the home front. You know, when a man and woman get married, two lives combine, two people combine, two personalities combine, but also two lives, friends, families. Today, I'd like to speak a little bit about what to do when that creates a certain kind of friction. What to do when one spouse, for whatever reason, justified or unjustified, disapproves of the company the other is keeping. Rabbi, how do we approach differing social lives within a marriage?
I think that initially, probably the best formula would be a complete hiatus from the rest of the world. Let the young couple go to a desert island and spend a year or two completely alone. And this way, all their other prior relationships just kind of dissipate into the past, and with a focus fully and totally on themselves.
So let's imagine the highly improbable situation where that's not possible.
I see.
And let's try and think of some way that we can approximate that.
Okay. So I agree with you. It's probably not a very practical solution.
But the idea is important. That's what you should aim for.
That's the concept. Yeah, the idea is that, you know, in the Torah there is a special mitzvah. It's a special commandment, something which is completely unique, and that is called Shana Rishona. The first year of marriage has its own principles, its own laws, and the time spent in this first year, people should be investing tremendous amount of attention with each other, getting to understand each other, getting to interact. And in this first year, it says that one should keep one's social contacts also to a minimum. It doesn't mean that the couple will go off into isolation and the couple cut all their previous ties, but they make it very clear, known to all concerned, family, friends, etc., that, you know, we're now married, and we're now spending a lot of time bonding together, and of course we're delighted to have guests, and we're delighted to, you know, to share our lives with our parents and siblings and friends, etc., but give us a lot of our own space. And I think this idea of giving space is really the essence of this first year. One of the great halachic commentaries of several hundred years ago said that in his mind he thinks that this first year mitzvah really should continue throughout one's life. That one should be all the time aware that a special new entity has been created, husband and wife, and they've got to be really, the majority of their focus must be on each other. Now, of course, we don't live in an ideal world, and shortly after honeymoon or after the initial excitement of the wedding, the vacation time around the wedding is over, he goes back to his situation, she goes back to her situation. They could be studying, they could be in the workplace, whatever it is. So obviously they're going back into their lives where they're spending a big chunk of their day away from each other, in an environment that they are familiar with and that they were part and parcel of beforehand. So how do they conduct themselves in this manner? So, you know, it's interesting. In Jewish law, when a woman gets married, there's a very clear indication that she's married. She changes her mode of dress, right? In particular, it's a married woman is obliged by halachic law to cover her hair, right? She's making a statement to the world. My hair is something which is very often the beauty of a woman is, so much attention is given to hair. That's reserved now for my husband. Right? She's just making a kind of a statement to the rest of the world around her. I'm erecting a little bit of a barrier around myself. I'm now a married woman, and I have a husband, and all of me now is part and parcel of him. And it's making a statement to the world. You know, some people think it's enough just to flaunt a ring. But rings, you know, sometimes you clasp your hands and you can't see no ring. So this is something that, by the way, it's a one-sided thing. The husband doesn't have any external manifestation of this change. That's because a woman's, she's much more vulnerable. Her beauty is now something which is absolutely being reserved only for her husband, and therefore, this is this halachic requirement of Jewish women covering their hair. So that's a statement, but a statement goes very, very deep and very, very far. Of course, one continues interacting with one's former environment, and it's one's ongoing environment. Very often that's where one's sustenance and one's life is, and very often one's career is centered around the workplace or the place of study, and that's to be respected. But it's important that a statement is made. When I say a statement, I don't mean a literal statement, but by modes of behavior. I'm now, says the husband and says the wife to his entire environment, I'm now a married person. And as such, my focus really is towards my spouse. And therefore, this certainly is very important in terms of cross-gender interactions. In other words, where it might have been common business practice for I'm not sure how healthy it is, but common business practice for a bachelor young man in a business context going out for coffee with a female co-employee, he must be much more careful about that now. It's not the kind of thing that you go where there's a social element. We need to work on something. Okay, so let's sit down in the context of a work environment and let's, work. But one has to remove anything that can lead to an over-closeness, or even, to be more extreme, an intimacy, an emotional intimacy. One has to be much more guarded with this element. There's a Jewish principle called Yichud. Yichud is that a male and female who are not married should not be in a closed environment which remains a private environment. They should not be together in a locked room. So there is this principle that in the workplace, in any exterior context, exterior from the marriage, they have to be much more guarded with their interactions.
So that's difficult in some. It varies job by job, I'm sure, but many jobs, so much of the work environment is, or at least overlaps with social interaction.
Yeah.
So much. Sometimes you go out after work for a drink with the colleagues.
Yeah. So I say again, that has to be much more contained, and a person should not be embarrassed of making a statement. Keep saying, "Oh, my wife," or publicly call your wife up and say hi. Make public statements. I'm now in a completely different league, in a different class. I'm now married, right? And I think that's very important. But vis-a-vis this cross, there is a custom of worth, real worth, where a married man doesn't even address a female co-worker by some pet name, or even by her first name. He rather says Ms. or Mrs. or but one has to be careful of any expression that can display any form of over closeness that might have been prevalent. A person's got to, in every element of his conduct and his behavior, make demonstrations to the point that I'm married, and as such, professionally this is where I am. But as a married person, my social interaction is really something that I do with my wife. And if there are, company parties or something, if one has to go to them, then see if you can bring your spouse along, and keep close with him and that, because inevitably interactions, cross-gender interactions, even if they're innocent and well-meaning, they're not healthy. They're not healthy for the marriage. It's an invasion of the privacy and the intimacy of a marriage. And one has to keep this very much in check, and very much, even at the expense of being maybe socially a little bit awkward But that's fine. We're an awkward people.
They may provoke jealousy as well. I mean, if a person is spending time with members of the opposite gender.
Yeah, sure. This is a well-placed jealousy. Jealousy, in essence, is not a positive trait, but the jealousy that you're referring to is demanding of loyalty and demanding of total exclusivity. You know, the halachic term of getting married is kiddushin. Kiddushin means is translated as a kind of a process of holiness is now entered. Something holy is something very special, something very set aside, something very, very on a pedestal, something very, very special. And a couple should constantly feel that we're in the context of holiness. And therefore, be very careful, sometimes even with close friends. Sometimes you have a situation of co-workers, of a boss. Certainly a Jewish woman should know to erect a kind of a hedge of roses around herself. And, you know, roses are very attractive, but they got thorns. And, you know, you don't just stick your hand into a hedge of roses. So it's important to make these statements. You see, it's a much more profound spiritual concept. May I wax a little bit Kabbalistic and mystic for a few minutes?
You were waxing so lyrical about rose bushes that I feel it would be an imposition to not allow you to wax Kabbalistic a little bit.
Thank you. So, you know, the Talmud tells us that there is a gift that is given to a couple by the Creator Himself, God Himself. Every couple that gets married, He gives a gift of extraordinary value. And the gift is what the Hebrew word is chen. Chen is a certain mystique or favor. You know, it says that there are three forms of this chen, of this very particular irrational favor. One of them is chen isha al ba'ala, that a husband and wife have some kind of a mysterious relationship, a bond that is extremely, extremely close and has a tremendous level of understanding built into it and tolerance. That's one chen. The other chen is a person for the place where he lives. You know, I've traveled around and sometimes been in suburbs or areas which look so uninviting, and yet uninviting in every sense of the word. It could be dangerous environment, a very unkempt environment, unfriendly environment, and yet you talk to the person who's living and he loves it. And you figure out, why is this? Because it's one of the chens, it's one of these particular favors. The Talmud says there's another kind of chen. Another kind of chen is a person has a special feeling for his craft or for his job, right? I once spoke to a garbage collector, and I was amazed. This fellow loved every element of his job. He was so proud of his job, right? You know, the social image of a garbage collector isn't like, you know, he's not somewhere at the top of the ladder of classy professions.
They're surprisingly highly paid, though.
No, that could be. Yeah, that could be. But he had a certain, you know, and he was completely connected to it. The most powerful of all is chen isha al ba'ala, that there's a very special bond that it completely defies any rationalization. It's something, it's brought out. This is a gift of God to the couple, that I'm giving you this very special feeling for each other. Now, we have to cherish this, because this is really the cement with which marriages is made of. Now, when there's an invasion into the real intimacy or privacy of this unit, it shakes up this chen, this very special relationship.
You're not talking about real infidelity, you're talking about even...
Yeah, no, I'm talking just about, even just on any level.
Anything which would give cause for jealousy, that's
right. And that's something which is a great shame, because a person is actually taking a fantastic God gift of closeness, where they're able to merge their lives together and face challenges together and build together, And a person is, by virtue of allowing others to invade the privacy and this intimacy, they're actually shaking the very foundations of this. And it's an interesting thing, that this concept exists even at the level of mere thought. See, we relate to thought as being a reality. When a person is thinking about someone, he's actually there. Right? This is a concept that thought has this extraordinary power of thought. A person's looking at someone. The person is actually there. And it's for this reason that husband and wives, in order to maintain this sanctity of this closeness, of this gift that they've been given, should keep their thoughts for each other. They shouldn't be thinking of other men or other women. And this is the real reason for why we are so careful with all sorts of exposures that the media very often provide, provocative kind of exposures, because these are an infringement on this closeness. So it's in thought. The eye is much more than a camera. The eye creates a certain reality of a relationship. All of these things have to be very, very carefully preserved, because we are looking to intensify and enhance this connection and savor this very special gift that's been given. So therefore, we want us to bear this in mind in all social interactions. Of course I have to interact with the world around me, but I've got to keep it at a level, keep it professional, keep it in its context, and don't allow it to go beyond the borders of too much closeness outside of the context of one's own. So this is in terms of cross-gender.
Yes, I'm assuming that's where you're going, but let's take the second. Let's take the classic case. Guy has a bunch of buddies, and they have a standing arrangement that okay, let's not say every night, but once a week, or a couple of times a week, they go out for a few beers and have a good old masculine chinwag inter alia. So now they're married, and she objects to this.
Well, my vote is with her. I think she has every right to object to this. If the person wants to go out for a basketball game, he's going out because he's working all day and he needs to have this expression, he needs the exercise, that's fine. But sitting in a pub, people aren't at their best after a few beers, and they start talking nonsense, and they start exposing more intimate things, more private, personal things. And she quite rightfully so can say, that's an infringement on our privacy. You shouldn't be where you're letting down all guards, because, beers tend to do that.
But let's say it's his way of letting off steam. Like you said, a basketball game or something is more acceptable. But let's say he gets together for a game of poker with his friends once a week.
My comments are the exact same. I think, what he needs to let out steam? Do it with his wife. Do it with your wife. Take your wife out for a beer.
He doesn't get time off?
I'm sorry?
He doesn't get some time off?
He's away enough of the time from his home. He's got to now refocus and rebuild all of his social interaction. It's only where it's absolutely a must, meaning if it's a company affair that you've got to go for the company, okay, that's part of business. But just to go out with the buddies usually doesn't bode well in terms of some, it's a healthy, wholesome kind of relationship. When a whole bunch of men are letting, their hair down, and you've got, a couple of beers helping him to do it, I don't think he's going to come out a more enhanced and improved individual. It's not going to do anything not for his life. This Western fallacy of, going places and allowing substance to help you relax, I think it's a real fallacy. One should find tranquility and relaxation in a much more productive environment. You've got kids, one can do tremendously productive things. Go and play a game of soccer or cricket with your kids. And if you've got a drink, right? Okay, so then do it with your wife. We're not getting into the issue of alcohol consumption, because that can become problematic. And the fact is that it's a massive challenge in society. There are huge percentages of the population that alcohol is actually ruining marriages and destroying marriages, and fine people, the social drink just gets that one too much. We've got plenty, in the context of Judaism, there are plenty of opportunities for imbibing alcohol in a very holy manner, right? On Shabbat, one's obliged to make Kiddush twice in 24 hours, and that entails, drinking wine. And there's fine, one can introduce wine, can be part and parcel of one's diet, but in this context, in the context of all the festivals and the holidays, always an excuse for as they say, a schnapps, for something. But so I think this whole social misconcept, of the boys going out for a night, I think it's a dangerous thing, and the wife most definitely, legitimately. Now, from the wife's perspective, she's got to do it with
tact.
With tact, she's got to do it with tact. She's got to, offer alternatives. And the woman has many alternatives. And if she sees that her husband is constantly veering desperately to get out of the home, there's an inherent problem in the marriage, and this has to be remedied, and this has to be looked into. And they should, work it out. If he just needs air, that means she or something in the home environment is not. A husband should feel very comfortable. He should be able to let his hair down and relax in the environment of his home, and not have to go out and use friends and substance to find this solace or this inner peace of mind. He ain't going to find it there.
If I may flip it around for a second, let's turn the table and say she has a weekly get-together with her friends. Would you view it in the same way? Is it the same problem?
It could be problematic. Let's say there, it's not necessarily around beer, I hope not. But
well, let's say it's not uncommon today that a group of women would go out for cocktails, even beers, that they would have a weekly...
Again, so my comments are pretty much the same. I don't think it's a healthy thing. I don't think anything that's going to lead to personal self-exposure to others. I'm talking about exposure in the emotional sense.
Right. Although obviously you'd be against other kinds of exposure as well.
Yeah. To expose too much sun can be
terrible.
damaging.
That's exactly what I meant.
Yeah. But I think that when a person is exposing themselves, their emotions and their feelings to others, it means that there's something lacking in their relationship with their spouse. Because they should be talking with each other, they should be getting to know each other on a deep level, they should be open with each other, they should be frank with each other, and there shouldn't be a need to have external outlets.
But what about friends? I mean, we're not suggesting...
So friends is fine. I'm not suggesting that they break off ties, but friends has got to be a healthy, wholesome, they're doing something, they can go shopping together, they can even spend, do something productive together.
Friends are often to connect with emotionally as well. You share your experiences, problems with them as well.
These things very often create a certain imbalance. When you're sitting around with a bunch of other friends and everybody's griping about something and everyone's, and they all start. So she's picking up, here's this innocent young lady, and she's picking up everybody else's hang-ups and problems. They have an effect. They have an effect. There happens to be a very central Jewish principle, one of the most important commandments that there are, mitzvot that there are, is keeping one's speech healthy and wholesome and away from there's a concept called Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is talking about others. There is such a concept, and that's why very often these casual social places, so they'll lapse into just kind of relaxed gossip. This is not a healthy thing. It's not a healthy thing. It is a contravention of Jewish law anyway. If a person needs an outlet, great, get together, do a project together. Get together, do something productive together. Do a social project together. Be helping someone do a charitable project together. a business project together, that's all fine. These are things all legitimate, and that is an outlet. But just these tea parties where there's nothing more than a bit of gossip and griping and personal exposure, these things are not healthy in general.
So you'd suggest finding something more edifying, a book club or something, that would be
a book club. I think getting stuck into something productive. There's so much help needed in so many areas of society. It's so fulfilling, it's so healthy, and then the wife comes and she spends the afternoon trying to help out sick kids or giving support to families, whatever it is. When her husband comes home, she's got so much positivity to talk about, and she's doing something. He'll appreciate this, as opposed to coming home with just a bunch of gossip and a bunch of frustrated people who've been venting and letting off. It's not going to do wonders for her personal self-growth, and it's going to rub off on her family and her family life. So rather be positive and constructive.
While we're talking about extramural activities without a marriage, I guess, what about sports? I mean, that's
sports is great. Sports is great.
Let's say going to the games. I mean, let's say a husband is I was going to say a rugby fan, but I guess for our international audience, we should include American football or soccer or whatever else it is. But let's say he's a fan.
Don't forget cricket.
And cricket.
Okay.
Cricket had its mentioned earlier, but okay.
Okay. It's like this. Look, that's okay. That's okay. Just again, if it becomes too much of a social thing of the boys, because there's no such concept of going to watch cricket without a six-pack, of beer. So again, we're getting into the same thing. Just there happens to be a different type of a focus. I'd rather recommend play sport. Get into the little leagues with your kids. Be actively involved rather than spectating. You want to watch a sports game? Fine. Today with technology, one can watch the best and the finest at no cost. Having to go with everybody and stand in these endless lines, and it's a whole experience. But again, it's the boys out together. I'm not sure if that's such a healthy type of environment.
So you think she would have a woman would have a good claim? It would be understandable on her part to object to that kind of thing.
I think so, yeah.
It's interesting. You're placing, when we place marriage on such a pedestal, and after waxing so lyrical about, and Kabbalistic about the holiness of marriage, so that requires a lot of self-control, a lot of self-discipline.
Absolutely. That's the name of the game in life, is self-control and self-discipline. We are creatures who have been created with built-in freedom of choice, with built-in ability to make choices, to make wholesome, healthy choices, and we should be making them. And we should be making them in the context of marriage and family. We should make them all the time. One thing has got to be at the center of a person's, at the forefront of a person's thoughts and drives and goals, and this is, am I enhancing my home life more? Spending time with the kids, spending time with a wife, in anything, any kind of productive thing, going for a hike, cooking together. Get involved in the kitchen if you need some kind of a social outlet.
You don't want to taste my cooking.
Okay, but I'm sure your wife afterwards fixes it up and remedies it, but just that act. Yeah, so if you can't cook, then bake. Or take the family out for a pizza. That's a family experience. It's something that where you're going out and you're doing something. Gardening. I mean, there's so many activities that we have that we don't need to, get back into this extricating myself from the marriage family context to be alone with the boys or be alone with the girls in a almost a I wouldn't say a negative environment, but a very flat,
it's escapism.
Unproductive. Yeah, it's escapism, exactly that. Rather, one should have variety in one's life, but you can inject variety into one's life in such a range of fascinating, exciting, and interesting ways. Build snowmen together, but if you live in Africa, but do productive, exciting things together with the family, with the kids, with the wife. Home decorating. If you need this, if there's this need of expression, express it within the context. Build another deck on top of your deck, but do things which are home-centered as opposed to escaping the home and going into some kind of another world. It's escaping the environment. You're now in a new reality, and that's your total reality. and don't keep trying to flit back to the old reality. It's not a healthy thing.
So it seems the problem is really our focus. The problem is that we think of marriage as something added to our personality, just another thing, and it has to fit in with the rest of our lives. It seems what we're seeing today is that really from a Jewish point of view, marriage is something which is supposed to be essential, which is supposed to be the focus of one's life. And even though a person needs to breathe and it's legitimate that a person should find places and people with whom and in which to do that, he should always be looking homeward. He should always be focusing on his wife. She should always be focusing on her husband, and trying to make sure that the person's life is always about building that home front.